The TreeHouse Adventures, written by John Carcello and Mallory Page.
Hey everybody, I'm Richard. I live here at the foster home with my friends Jaylee, Jasmine, and Annalisa. Foster homes are for kids who don't have any parents or legal guardians to take care of them. And before this summer, life was boring here. We basically did the same old things every day. Wake up, eat whatever breakfast Big Jim and Harry constructed, go to school, come home, do homework and chores, go to bed, then wake up and do it all again. I imagine our lives here aren't too different from the lives you have at your house. And to be honest, I'm just thankful to have a house to stay in. I never thought I'd end up here, but I'm glad I did because of what we just experienced this summer. We were grounded for doing something we shouldn't have when we noticed something brand new in our backyard. It was, well, I'm already getting ahead of myself. Why don't I just tell you the whole story? Buckle up because this is gonna be a wild adventure.
Chapter 1. The Adventure Begins.
This is stupid,
Richard said, throwing his toy cars in anger.
They can't keep us locked in here forever,
He lamented,
I told you we would get in trouble.
said Jaylee.
Yeah, it was your bright idea that got us stuck up here in the first place while everyone else enjoys the ice cream party.
Annalisa protested.
Jake is gonna be so mad at me, he's probably gonna end up hanging out with Emily. But, gosh, I hope she's lactose intolerant,
said Jasmine.
How was I supposed to know that bug spray was flammable?
Richard asked.
Oh, how about because I kept screaming, stop, stop, Richard, that's flammable.
Annalisa quipped.
Whatever,
Richard replied. Suddenly the kids heard someone hammering in the backyard. Richard ran over to the window to see what was going on.
Wow,
Richard exclaimed,
What is it?
asked Jaylee.
it looks like they're building a treehouse outside. Come look.
Richard urged. The three girls went over to join Richard at the window. They were amazed to see an almost finished treehouse in the foster home's backyard.
That's so cool.
Jasmine said.
I've never been in a treehouse before. They don't usually make them wheelchair accessible.
Replied Jaylee.
Like that has ever stopped us.
Annalisa quipped.
Well, I'm gonna check out that treehouse with or without you.
Richard declared.
We can't. We're grounded, remember?
Asked Jaylee.
And if we keep listening to you, then we'll be grounded forever.
Annalisa snapped.
And then Jake will marry Emily and have kids with stupid names like Gemily.
Jasmine cried.
Oh, come on. It'll be fun.
Said Richard unfazed.
I don't know.
Replied Jaylee as Richard began opening the window.
Richard, be careful.
Jaylee urged.
Yeah, go on, Ricky boy. We'll get Jaylee down there all by ourselves. Way to be a gentleman.
Annalisa said. Rolling his eyes, Richard replied.
Fine. Come on, Jaylee.
The three girls worked with Richard to help get Jaylee out of the window. Peering down to the ground, Jaylee said,
I don't know. That looks awfully far.
I'll say, and if you think I'm gonna get these amazing new flats all dirty for some dumb old treehouse, you're crazy.
Jasmine sneered.
Jazzy, come on. Hey, you might be able to see Jake from up there.
Jaylee replied.
And what a hideous outfit Emily is wearing.
Annalisa said.
Ew, I bet it's gross. I'm in.
Jasmine said. With that, the kids all made their way to the treehouse.
This is so cool.
Exclaimed Jaylee, looking around the treehouse.
Yeah!
Richard and Jasmine shouted in agreement. None of the children had noticed a man bent over in the corner of the treehouse, holding a hammer and some nails. Lifting his head, the man said,
What are you kids doing up here?
The kids looked at the man, startled, having been unaware of his presence.
We're sorry, sir. We were just curious.
Jaylee said timidly.
Whoa, did you build this all by yourself?
Asked Richard.
Yeah, I had a little help here and there. I'm just doing some final touches. Now, if y'all are going to stick around, you just be careful where you step. There can be nails anywhere.
The man replied. The kids explored the treehouse a bit as the man continued working. Richard stopped when he noticed a book on the floor near the man's lunchbox. Richard picked up the book and asked,
What's this?
Well, that's my Bible.
The man replied. Sounding disappointed, Richard replied,
Oh, that's boring.
Well, then you must not read the same stories I have because there's nothing boring about it.
The man replied.
I've heard some stories. They make us go to Sunday school.
Richard replied.
They're teaching us the story of Jesus,
Said Jaylee, opting to join in the conversation.
Oh, yeah? What have you learned so far?
Asked the man.
He did magic or something.
Said Richard.
They're called miracles.
Annalisa scolded.
Whatever.
Replied Richard as he opened the Bible, looking to see what was on the page he landed on.
Ah, yes. The story of Jerry's daughter.
The man said knowingly, peering down at the Bible, observing that Richard had opened it to Mark, chapter 5.
She's the little girl who dies, right?
Asked Annalisa.
That's right. Her father was a leader in the local synagogue.
Replied the man.
A local whatagogue?
Asked a confused Richard.
Synagogue. It's what Jews called their church.
Annalisa replied.
Oh, okay. Why not just call it a church?
Asked Richard.
Richard!
Jaylee snapped.
What?
Richard asked.
Sorry, sir. Please continue the story.
Jaylee urged.
Well, I could, but why don't you just see for yourselves?
Asked the man.
What?
Asked Jaylee. The man pointed at the window. Suddenly, the quiet foster home's backyard came to life with the sound of a crowd. The 4 kids quickly moved to the window to find they were no longer in their backyard. They found themselves in Capernaum with Jesus and his disciples, surrounded by a large crowd as they entered a small house. None of the children could believe what they were seeing.
Where are we?
A surprised Richard asked. Turning around, Richard realized that the man had vanished.
Is that really Jesus down there?
Asked Annalisa.
How is that possible?
Asked Richard.
I want to go down there and see.
Said Jaylee. As Jesus entered the house, he asked everyone there a strange question.
Why are you all crying?
Jesus then proclaimed.
The little girl isn't dead. She's only asleep.
At this, everyone in the house laughed at Jesus, assuming he had confused someone who had died with someone asleep. Jesus was not discouraged by their mockery. Instead, he insisted that he see the little girl. The kids were watching all this unfold with great anticipation.
Unbelievable. We are actually at Jarius' house. This is amazing.
Jaylee said.
Jarius? It kind of sounds like Jake.
Said Jasmine.
No way!
Richard clapped back at Jasmine.
Want to go in?
Asked Annalisa.
Even if I wanted to, look at that crowd. There's no way we could squeeze through that, especially not with Jaylee's chair.
Richard replied.
You guys should go on without me.
Said Jaylee.
That is not happening.
Annalisa said without hesitating.
Really, it's okay. This is so special that we are here. I don't want you to miss out.
Jaylee replied. Jasmine pointed at the side of Jarius' house and asked.
Why doesn't that window have any glass in it?
Window! That's it, Jasmine. You're a genius.
Annalisa said.
Pretty sure that's the first time that sentence has ever been uttered.
Richard quipped.
Hey!
Jasmine replied, clearly offended.
Guys, stop.
Said Jaylee.
Let's go over to the window and peek in. Maybe we'll have a front row seats for the miracle.
Annalisa suggested.
Sounds good to me.
Exclaimed Richard.
I wish I looked like that when I slept.
Said Jasmine.
Jasmine.
Jaylee scolded.
What?
Asked Jasmine.
She has a point, Jaylee. Jasmine looks and sounds like a wildebeest when she sleeps.
Annalisa jabbed. Jasmine gasped, clearly offended, while Richard laughed and repeated Annalisa.
A wildebeest?
Said Richard.
Would you guys please knock it off? Jasmine, you are beautiful and you know it. And Annalisa, be nice. My sister cannot help how loud she snores.
Jaylee said, unable to resist getting in on teasing Jasmine.
Hey! way!
Jasmine protested. Turning his attention back to the window, Richard saw that Jesus was at the little girl's bedside and said,
Oh man, it's about to go down.
Why did Jesus say she is sleeping? She clearly isn't breathing.
Jaylee asked.
That's a good question. He said the same thing about Lazarus after he died too. But then he plainly told the disciples that Lazarus had died after they thought he was literally just asleep.
Annalisa replied.
Maybe death to us is sleep to Christ?
Jaylee suggested.
Would you two please just be quiet and watch?
Snapped Richard. Just then, Jesus leaned over next to the little girl's ear and said,
Talitha cum. Little girl, get up.
The little girl's eyes immediately opened, and she began breathing heavily, gasping for air. Jesus smiled and said,
That's it. Breathe in and out. Again.
Instructed Jesus.
What happened?
The little girl asked.
God was glorified.
Jesus replied.
Why do you look so familiar?
She asked.
Let's just say, you and I go way back.
Jesus replied, still smiling.
We do?
She asked.
Yes, indeed. I watched you grow up.
Jesus replied.
I don't ever remember seeing you at my house.
She said.
This is actually the first time I've been to your house. The first time I met you, we were at my house.
Jesus replied.
Oh, that's funny. I don't remember when we met. How old was I?
The little girl asked.
You weren't.
Jesus started to explain and then stopped.
I wasn't what?
She asked, hoping Jesus would continue.
It's complicated. Let's just say that I knew you before you knew me, or before anyone else knew you.
Jesus said. Suddenly, Richard burped loudly and caught Jesus' attention. Jesus continued peering back at the window and said to the little girl,
Why don't you run along now? There's a lot of people out there that will be happy to see you.
Before the little girl could leave the room, she had a few more questions for Jesus.
Can I come back to your house sometime?
She asked. Jesus replied, smiling.
Yes, in fact, the next time you come over, you'll never have to leave.
Can my parents come?
She asked.
I'm not sure they remember how to get there, but I think when they see you, that might help them remember the way. So you'd better hurry.
Jesus replied.
Thank you. Wait, you're Jesus, aren't you?
She asked.
I am,
said Jesus.
I knew you'd come.
She replied. As she got out of her bed, her parents came into the room and embraced her, amazed that Jesus brought their little girl back to life. Meanwhile, Jesus walked over to the window to talk to the children from the foster home. He said,
You know, the last time anyone tried to play hide and seek with me, it was in a garden. They weren't very good at it either.
It wasn't me, it was all Jaylee's idea.
Richard cried. Jesus laughed and said,
Yeah, he blamed the girl that was with him in the garden too, Richard.
You know my name?
asked a stunned Richard.
No, it was a lucky guess.
Quipped Annalisa.
Annalisa, please stop.
Jaylee urged.
Hi, Jaylee.
Jesus said, smiling.
Hi.
Jaylee replied nervously. Before the conversation could continue, Jarius and his wife ran over and embraced Jesus, thanking him for bringing their little girl back to life. Not knowing what to say, Jaylee remarked,
I can't believe what I just saw.
I can't believe he knew my name.
Richard added.
I can't believe you ruined the moment by burping like a cow.
Annalisa sneered.
I couldn't help it. That salami I had yesterday didn't sit right.
Richard replied.
I can't believe that some girls actually look that beautiful when they sleep.
Whimpered Jasmine.
Ay. Guys, it's getting late. We need to get back to the treehouse.
Jaylee said.
Good call, Jaylee.
Exclaimed Richard.
At least you think one of my ideas are actually good today, Richard.
Jaylee said. Richard sheepishly looked over his shoulder at Jaylee, remembering that he had thrown her under the bus before Jesus, and said,
Oh, are you talking about what I said back there? I just wanted to make sure you got the credit, for the great idea.
Oh, come on.
Snapped Annalisa.
Fine, I'm sorry, Jaylee.
Richard replied.
I forgive you.
Jaylee said, smiling.
Want to race back to the treehouse, Annalisa?
Richard asked.
I'll race race you, Richard.
replied Jasmine.
I'm not sure that would be fair. Aren't wildebeests way faster than humans?
Richard jabbed. Jasmine gasped and called out to her sister for support.
Jaylee!
Again, unable to resist teasing Jasmine, Jaylee replied.
Richard, leave her alone. She's nowhere near as fast as a wildebeest.
Jaylee quipped.
Jaylee!
Shouted Jasmine, feeling betrayed by her sister.